Today we're going to have a look at the bandsaw. The bandsaw gets its name because the blade is actually a large band that runs around two large flywheels. The bottom wheel is the driving wheel, it's the one connected directly to the motor. The top one is free spinning, so it'll spin around, and it's used for adjusting the tension and for tracking the blade on the top wheel so that it runs true through the guides. When putting a new blade onto your bandsaw, as well as using the tensioning knob underneath, there is a small knob that's on the front of the freewheeling flywheel. This one tilts the flywheel backwards and forwards to help to set the tracking of the blade. Generally, once you get your blade tracked, you don't need to touch this, and touching that or moving that can take the blade off the wheel. There's a chance that it'll fall off when it's being used. If it needs to be tracked, this is the one that you use. The one underneath is the tensioning wheel. When it comes to changing the blade on your bandsaw, first thing you need to do is make sure the machine is turned off so it's not going to accidentally start. And then by loosening the tension wheel, it takes the tension off the blade, allows it to become slack so that you can bring it out. Take care when you're handling these. This blade is fairly blunt, but it's still going to cut me. Bandsaw blades can come in differing widths. The thinner the blade, the tighter the curve you can cut. When you get a new bandsaw blade, they'll usually come coiled up and held together in some way, and the safest way to uncoil it ready to put onto the saw is to basically just throw it out in front of you once you've removed the tyres. When you get your new blade, most important thing is to make sure that the teeth are going to be facing down as they comes down through the table. So pass it in, get it over your lower wheel, get it roughly into the guide bushings. Start to tension it up. And it doesn't need to be directly on the middle of the wheel when you're first getting it in there. But having it going through your guides is very helpful. Start to tension it up. And as you turn it a little bit, providing you haven't mucked around with this middle adjuster first, the blade should generally self-track itself onto the centre of the wheel. I generally just spin it around a couple of times, check that it's going to be sitting on the wheel, it's staying just in front of my guide bushing there, and then we tighten this up, and this will raise this up and it will bring the tension up. Some bandsaws like this one will have a guide on the side which basically tells you to tighten it up to the width of the blade. This one's about a 10mm or a 3/8 inch blade. And that looks pretty good now. Spin it by hand again just to check that it's tracking right. Close up the top and bottom ones because you don't want those things to pop off at all. And you also want to make sure that you do get any other safety guards in place. And before you go using it for the very first time, do a test run on it. And if it hasn't been adjusted properly, that blade will pop off the wheels. that sounds pretty good. When it comes time to packing away your old blade, you want to be careful that you don't cut your hands. If you want to wear gloves, that can be a good idea. More often than not, your blade's blunt, which is why you want to change it in the first place. But using an opposite hand grip, it's kind of like putting away one of those pop-out tents. Just give it a bit of a twist. Your blade gets into a smaller ring, put a little bit of tape around that. These can be resharpened, so you can get them off, send them off to be resharpened, or you can basically just send them off for scrap. It's up to you. When it comes to packing away your old blades, you've got to be really careful they don't hurt your hands. If you want to wear gloves, it's probably a good idea. But it's kind of like putting away one of those weird tents. Just give it a bit of a twist, get it into a smaller ring, and then tie or tape that up.